Hi, my friends! Today, we're going to read about Dr. Martin Luther King. This book's name is called Martin Luther King Jr., A Peaceful Leader. This is Dr. Martin Luther King. Let's see his life story. This book is written by Sarah Albee, pictures by Chin Ko. Martin Luther King Jr. was born in 1929. He and his family lived in a pretty yellow house in Atlanta, Georgia. His father was a minister. There were lots of books at home. Young Martin was a happy child, but as he grew older, he realized that black people and white people were not treated the same way. Once, Martin's father took him to buy new shoes. The white salesman asked them to move to the back of the store. They left. Another time, Martin accidentally stepped on a white lady's toe. She slapped him and called him a bad name. He did not react with anger. He believed that bravery meant peacefully standing your ground. From very young, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. realized that bravery meant peacefully standing your ground. At home, Martin learned to listen, ask questions, and speak up. He finished high school in just 2 years. He went to college at age 15. Then he continued his studies. Should he be a lawyer? A doctor? Perhaps a professor? Martin chose to become a minister. Like his father and grandfather, he earned his PhD and became Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Wow, he did his PhD and became a Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. In the United States in the 1950s, black people and white people were still not treated as equals. Separating black people and white people was known as segregation. In some states, there were separate and not as nice bathrooms, playgrounds, and schools for black people. Black people had to give up their bus seats for white passengers. It was segregation law. So playgrounds, bathrooms, schools, restaurants, water fountains, they always a sign that was read colored only or white only. So black people only can go to the colored only place. And it's all separate. Black people can only sit in the back of the bus. Dr. King and his new wife, Coretta, moved to Montgomery, Alabama. He had a job as a pastor at the church. His words were powerful. He was a natural leader. He joined the civil rights movement. Other black leaders were impressed by the young preacher. They thought he would be a good person to help lead their cause. This was his wife and this was his church. He was a preacher in the church and very powerful speaker. Then a moment came where Dr. King felt he could make a difference. A woman named Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat on a bus. She was arrested. This was in 1955. It happened in Montgomery. Dr. King and other civil rights leaders organized a protest. Dr. King urged black people to stop riding the city's buses. That was a bus boycott. Boycotts on the city's public transportation because in the bus it was unjust laws. The white people sit separately from the black people and black people cannot sit on white people's seats. For 381 days, most black people stopped riding buses to work. They walked and carpooled. Dr. King walked with them. The protest worked. The Supreme Court ruled that buses in Montgomery would no longer be segregated. Dr. King helped change the law. He had changed it peacefully by doing a peaceful boycott on public transportation on the buses. So they walked for 381 days. Every day when they went to work or went any places, they walked. They never took bus. Under Dr. King's leadership, the civil rights movement grew. Black people bravely sat down in whites-only restaurants. Black children bravely attended whites-only schools. Black people and white people marched together. They kept protesting unfair laws, and they did it peacefully. We want equality and segregation now. Equal rights for all. These were some of the signs they were holding when they were at the protest. Some people were afraid of what would happen if laws were changed. Some were so angry they shouted, set fires, and beat protesters. Once a bomb went off on Dr. King's porch. Dr. King and other leaders were arrested many times. Dr. King showed everyone how to stand up for what is right. Peaceful protest took courage. Nothing is so easy. Dr. King and the protesters and their leaders were thrown into jail for so many times because they were in the protest for their own equal rights. In 1963, thousands of people marched in Washington, D.C. Dr. King gave a powerful speech. The world watched him on TV. In 1964, Dr. King won a Nobel Peace Prize, a reward for his work to create fairness without violence. Then one day in 1968, a white man shot Dr. King. Dr. King died the next day. Millions mourned him. Dr. King had known he might not live to see liberty and justice for all, but he believed there were things worth dying for. Dr. King's courage and his love, his ability to lead and to be heard will live on. In his short lifetime, Dr. King changed the way people saw one another. Today, we live in a world that there's no segregation anymore. People respect each other. We have equal rights. We share the space. There's no whites only or colored only signs anymore. There's less discrimination. It's a lot is Dr. King's. Thanks to Dr. King that he led the civil rights movement in the 1960s, so we can enjoy a fair world, a more equal world today. Thanks to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Hope you enjoyed the book. Bye.